after my son's death. I was kicked out, but the will reading revealed an incredible secret. Sarah sat in the shadow of her once bright living room, choked by the oppressive silence that hung like a funeral shroud around her. The laughter of her former life had been replaced by an echoing emptiness since Tommy's tragic death. As a nurse, she had faced the grave realities of life and death countless times, yet nothing prepared her for the unfathomable loss of her child. Now even the walls of her home wore the weight of grief, and with every heartbeat, despair gnawed at her soul. When the Emersons, her estranged in-laws, had barged in cold and unforgiving, claiming her grief rendered her unworthy of their legacy, the final blow fell. Their glances were sharp, their words sharper, and in that moment, the bonds that once tied her to her husband's family splintered into jagged shards of disdain. The crushing weight of rejection merged with the sorrow of losing Tommy, making her feel as if she were drifting in a stormy sea with no shore in sight. What worth did she have now? She was left questioning her place in a world that seemed to turn against her. Just as she was spiraling into a deeper chasm of despair, Sarah learned about the will reading. As anxiety gripped her, she felt the faintest flicker of hope igniting inside her. Could her late husband, James, have prepared a path for her amidst this tumult? He had always supported Tommy's dreams, coupling them with their family history in a hidden journal. Determined, she envisioned that journal as a lifeline to both her husband's love and her son's aspirations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the days leading up to the will reading, Sarah combed through their simple home, the vibrant memories flooding back each time she turned a page of the journal. It was as if she were unearthing a treasure chest filled with love. Each memory was a bond between her and James, rekindling hope through the storm of grief. But with each laugh she found, the chasm between her and the Emerson family widened. The thought of sitting in that room with the people who kicked her out sent her heart racing, muscles taut with anxiety. The day arrived and tension crackled in the air. Sarah wore her faded nursing scrubs, a stark contrast to her in-laws' polished appearance. As the attorney read James' last wishes, silence enveloped the room, thickening with each spoken word. And then, out of nowhere, a twist. Tommy had inherited a significant stake in the Emerson estate. And alongside it, James had quietly invested in a health clinic meant to uplift the community. The news was electric, tearing through Sarah's heart with the force of a storm. A fierce resolve washed over her as anger and sorrow intertwined. The Emersons had overlooked her, but their disdain no longer defined her. Standing up, she felt the current swirling within, ready to confront the family that dismissed her love as unworthy. But could she bridge the distance? Would their pride shatter beneath a mother's unyielding love, and a husband's enduring legacy? As she stared into the cold eyes of the Emerson family, the weight of her past pressed against her, and the question lingered. Would she seize this moment to demand recognition, or would she retreat once more into silence? The room crackled with uncertainty, leaving Sarah on the precipice of transformation, wrestling with the desire for acceptance and the need for autonomy. The air was thick with tension as Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, each pulse echoing the conflict raging within her. She had been reduced to a mere shadow, the grieving widow, the undeserving mother in the eyes of the Emerson family. But in that moment, she felt a flicker of change. She cleared her throat, the sound breaking through the suffocating silence. For too long she had allowed their disdain to seep into her soul, but now, standing before them, she could feel the resolve building inside. James wanted us to work together, she began, her voice steady but strained, amplified by emotion. She cast a quick glance at the attorney, then returned her gaze to the frozen faces of her in-laws, their expressions a mosaic of confusion and contempt. This estate, this legacy, it's meant to include me, Tommy. We are family. A member of the Emerson family scoffed, visibly unfazed by her declaration. Family? You've lost your place since the day you lost your husband. James, wouldn't he want you dragging us down with your grief? The words sliced deep, reminiscent of the many ways they had already dismissed her. But instead of retreating, Sarah pressed on, driven by a growing current of defiance. You think because I wear scrubs and my hair is tied back that I am somehow less? I was a partner to James in every sense. And I am here to ensure that Tommy's part of this legacy is honored, not squandered. There was a collective shift in the room. Not immediately perceptible but unmistakably present. As if the air had changed temperature. It was invigorating. Their disbelief fed her warrior spirit. She would not crumble. She would rise. As days passed, Sarah pored over the journal, unraveling the complexities of James' wish to see a health clinic flourish. It had been more than a business endeavor. It symbolized hope, a beacon for those in need. Each line she read further ignited her passion to not only claim her rightful place, but to drive the vision her husband had initiated. Her role as a nurse now took on a new spectrum. She wasn't just a caregiver. She could be a catalyst for change. With this realization, a plan began to solidify in her mind. She reached out to the clinic's board members. Cold emails turned into passionate conversations, and slowly trust grew. The Emersons had underestimated her tenacity, failing to see the depths of her resolve. Yet beneath the surface of her newfound strength lay a profound dilemma. Would she pursue this path independently, risking further alienation from the Emersons? Or could there be a way to involve them? The prospect of reconciling the rift gnawed at her, whispering doubts into her ear. The thought of confronting them again, however, gave her pause. Did she really want to continue their association? Or was severing ties the only way to build her own legacy? No longer just a nurse or a grieving mother, Sarah was evolving into a determined leader. Each interaction built her confidence, and soon, she was ready to face the Emerson family. The time had come for an ultimatum, a meeting to discuss the clinic's future and her role within it, where she would unmask their erroneous perceptions and stake her claim. As she prepared herself for this confrontation, vivacious yet nervous, she rehearsed the words that would convey her unwavering commitment. This was not just about the clinic anymore. It was about reclaiming her own identity and honor. In the mirror, she looked at the face of a woman transformed. The fear and doubt that had once marred her features were replaced by determination. She could reshape her narrative. The urgency of the moment electrified her. As she dialed the Emerson family's number, her heart raced, anticipation mingling with anxiety. Would they respect her vision? Or would they attempt to stifle her again? The phone rang, and she prepared for the confrontation, knowing that this moment would define her next steps. But with each ring, a question echoed through her mind. Was she truly ready to face the consequences of her choices? The line clicked through, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt suspended in time before the familiar voice of the family attorney broke through the silence. Hello, Sarah. I hope you're well. The family is available for a meeting tomorrow at 11 to discuss James's estate. Tomorrow at 11 works, she replied, her voice a careful mix of firmness and restraint. As she hung up, a deep breath escaped her lips. This was it, no backing down now. The weight of the moment pressed on her shoulders, but instead of crushing her, it fueled her. She spent the rest of the day strategizing, poring over the journal entries that had become her lifeline. Each page was a conversation with James, a dialogue infused with his hopes and dreams. She envisioned his encouragement, how he believed in her ability to make the clinic a sanctuary for compassion and care. She could feel his spirit guiding her, more tangible than the Emerson family's disdain. What would James say if he could see her now? Would he be proud or worried? The thought brought an unexpected warmth, one that drove her to jot down every idea she had. She flipped through the pages of potential futures for the clinic, community programs, partnerships with local nonprofits, and a patient-centered approach that spoke to her nursing background. As she detailed her vision, her phone buzzed. A text from one of the board members, eager for updates on their discussions, ignited a surge of adrenaline. It was in this moment that Sarah understood the power of her voice. She wasn't just a widow fighting for her son's legacy. She had a significant role to play in shaping a critical community resource. The next day dawned gray but promising. Sarah arrived at the Emerson family home early, the chill in the air mirroring her nerves. Each breath in the calm of the morning was a reassurance. She had come further than she ever imagined. As the family trickled into the room, The usual disdain flickered across their faces, a reminder of the battles that lay ahead. She set her jaw, fueled by the importance of what was to come. If they thought they could dismiss her again, they were in for a surprise. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steady as she glanced around the table. "I know there's been tension surrounding James's legacy, but I believe we should redirect that energy into a collaborative effort." "Collaborative effort?" A familiar voice scoffed, lips curling in mockery. "What do you know about running a clinic?" A tremor ran through her, the old insecurities bubbling to the surface momentarily. But she quashed them, her earlier resolve crashing back like a wave. "I know enough to formulate a plan. This clinic means more than just traditional healthcare. It's about understanding our community's needs. I am a nurse and I have a vision that James believed in. One we can all support," she pressed, channeling a blend of conviction and vulnerability. As she outlined her proposals, their expressions shifted slightly. Each detail brought a subtle increase in tension, an unease that rippled through the room, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths. She could see the Emersons wrestling internally, perhaps beginning to acknowledge her not only as James's widow, but as a professional with a legitimate stake in this future. But even as she laid out her ideas, self-doubt whispered in the corners of her mind. What if they sabotaged her plans? What if they continued to wield their influence to undermine her efforts? As the emotional tug-of-war played out, one of the family members interjected, "Let us be honest. You really think we would allow you to have a say in the direction of an estate like this?" She could practically feel the walls closing in. Yet within the shadows of their disdain, she discovered a thread of clarity. "If you truly believe in your late brother's vision, then you must see the value in including me." The silence that followed was suffocating, but beneath that suffocation was the unmistakable sound of her heart beating, reminding her of the stakes of Tommy, of an uncertain future that she was determined to shape. In that charged atmosphere, a possibility flickered to life. What if she could convert their resistance into a challenge? Perhaps consulting them was less about seeking approval, and more about demanding respect. But before she could voice this pivot, the attorney cleared his throat, shifting the dynamics again. "Let us allow everyone to fully digest these proposals before discussing how to move forward," he suggested, and Sarah felt the residual tension bounce around the room like a live wire. Her heart raced anew at the choices that lay ahead. Could she navigate this storm to seize control of her fate? Or was she stepping into a deeper conflict? As the meeting adjourned, Sarah's mind whirled with possibilities. She may have planted the seeds of collaboration, but what profound consequences would sprout from this step into uncharted territory? How far would the Emersons go to protect their legacy from her growing influence? Resolved, she made up her mind. She wouldn't merely push against their barriers, she would dismantle them. How could she leverage the tensions in her favor, and use their dynamics for her advantage? As she stepped out into the blustery air, her breath visible in the cold, another question arose with fervor. Was confrontation the only way forward, or could she find a bridge amid the divide? The momentum from the meeting settled into Sarah's bones like ice, chilling yet invigorating. Words swirled in her mind, each one heavy with implication, shifting between the dread of loss and the spark of initiative. She stepped outside the Emerson estate, battling the chaotic blend of uncertainty and determination. How could she ensure her voice wouldn't just echo in that room but resonate throughout the clinic's future? The briskness of the air felt sharp against her cheeks, a reminder that every breath she took was a step further away from fear, and closer to possibility. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she fumbled with her phone to review the notes she'd hastily scribbled earlier. Her strategic outline for the clinic lingered in her mind. Workshops, health fairs, open forums to discuss vital community issues. She envisioned patients as partners, not just subjects of care. But there was a hurdle looming larger than the family dynamics within the Emerson group. Several board members were elders in the field, established experts who had long since painted their corners firmly in the realm of traditional healthcare. Sarah's heart sank momentarily as she recalled the skepticism in their eyes. They would see her as inexperienced, as an outsider demanding a role. No, she wasn't an outsider anymore. She could frame herself as a change agent, a necessity even. Her nursing background, coupled with her personal trials, bestowed upon her a unique lens through which to address issues of health and wellness. The journey would require grit, but she could weave it into a tapestry vibrant with healing. She just needed to convince them. Upon returning home, Sarah planted herself at the kitchen table, the fading remnants of warmth from the afternoon sun bathing her in golden light. She scoured resources online, researching avant-garde healthcare practices and reading case studies of clinics that had embraced innovative forms of patient engagement. Each article fed her ambition and broadened her perspective, allowing the resolve within her to flourish. It was not enough merely to push for change. She must deeply understand how to implement it effectively. Yet the gnawing voice of doubt crept in again. Was she moving too fast? Should she work more diplomatically? Perhaps seek to find allies within the board to soften the Emerson's stance? With a swift shake of her head, she drowned out the uncertainties. Those emotions were toxic. They threatened to derail her focus. As night fell, a plan began to crystallize. She'd call a meeting, this time of her own. A select group of progressive board members and potential allies eager for change in the clinic's approach. If she could build a foundation of support, perhaps it would translate into the backing she desperately needed come the next board meeting. In the dead of night, with dark ink staining the pages of her notebook, Sarah drafted invitations. Each line articulated her hope for collaboration and innovation, extending the narrative she envisioned for the clinic, a thriving institution that could serve, listen, and heal. One by one, her invited guests responded with enthusiasm, binding her to an ever-expanding network of potential allies. The ripple effect grew within her at the growing realization of how her actions could instigate a formidable change. But shadows lingered on the fringes. The Emersons, with all their wealth and influence, loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. Some were content to continue the status quo, and others would resist her efforts with fervor. Was she prepared to face the wrath of an entrenched family unwilling to adapt? The echoes of their belittlement haunted her, yet they fueled a fire. She would not allow them to define her limitations. As midnight approached, she steadied her breath and closed her eyes, envisioning the clinical space transformed a hub of empathy, innovation, and resurgence. But lurking behind her ambitious plans was another thought that tethered tightly to her ambition. Would the Emersons descend upon her nascent team and attempt to sabotage her before she could fully take off? Would they disrupt the momentum she longed to build? With renewed determination, Sarah rose from her chair, her resolve sharpened. Tomorrow marked a new day, but only time would tell if it would bring growth or further conflict. The next chapter was unfolding. Would the Emerson family's resistance darken her path? Or could she find a way to leverage their discontent into an opportunity for collaboration? The sun rose with a hesitant glow, casting long shadows across the campus of the clinic as Sarah prepared for her pivotal meeting. Today was not merely about gathering a few supportive voices. It was about asserting her presence and laying down a vision that was both transformative and enduring. The weight of anticipation settled over her like a mantle, emboldening yet suffocating. Standing in front of the clinic's entrance, she felt her pulse quicken. A wave of anxiety crashed over her as she recalled the faces of the Emerson board, hard-set, skeptical, unyielding. Her mind flitted back to the snippets of conversation from the last meeting, the dismissive comments, the barely concealed smirks. They would not make this easy. As she stepped inside, her resolve sharpened. Sarah reminded herself that every impactful leader faced opposition. She had witnessed countless patients at their most vulnerable, driven by a need for change and improvement in their care. Today she would channel that drive into her presentation. She greeted her allies, those few board members who genuinely sought reform and innovation. Their support felt like an anchor, steadying her amid the tumult of uncertainty and fear. They exchanged nods of encouragement and whispered reassurances, instantly easing the loneliness that had seeped into her heart. When it was time to present, Sarah gathered her notes, her hands steadied by the knowledge that she had invested hours crafting a plan that resonated not just with passion but with research strategy. She opened with a story, her story connecting her background as a nurse and the moments that had challenged her to rethink patient care. She made eye contact, weaving the audience into her narrative. Throughout the presentation, the confidence she felt sprang from the realization that while the Emersons wielded power and prestige, she had something they lacked: the conviction to inspire change through genuine compassion and understanding. She painted a vivid picture of a clinic that could truly listen, adapt, and evolve. With each word, she watched her vision take form, and the room shifted slightly as if they too felt the energy burgeon. Yet as her presentation progressed, she noticed veins of skepticism in the expressions of some board members, especially those closely aligned with the Emersons. Their eyes glinted with resistance, a defiance that bordered on contempt. The shifting dynamics stirred something primal, within her a flicker of doubt. Would they stifle her enthusiasm with their cynicism? But then a revelation sparked. Instead of retreating at signs of disapproval, she leaned in, engaging them directly. What if we partake in pilot programs? Let us measure their impact and address any concerns collectively, she proposed. A method rooted in collaboration, inviting them to contribute rather than contest. The board's energy morphed by the end of her speech. Whispers turned into thoughtful murmurs. A dialogue began to sprout instead of a cold rejection. As she navigated questions and encouraged ideas, Sarah felt the initial walls of resistance begin to crumble. Progress would not be instantaneous, but she could pave the way to possibility. Later that evening, as she sifted through emails, a notification flashed, a message from Francesca Emerson, one of the staunchest opposition voices. The invitation from Sarah had piqued her interest, a surprising twist. Let us discuss this further. I appreciate your fresh perspective, it read succinctly. Could this be the opening she needed? The Emersons could still turn the tide against her if Francesca held more sway than anticipated. A tremor of uncertainty lingered. Could she trust Francesca? What might this engagement cost her? But a deeper current of excitement coursed through Sarah, emboldening her to reach out once more. Could this budding connection with a member of the Emerson family turn into an unexpected alliance? Or would it spiral into yet another complication she underestimated? She took a moment staring at the screen, feeling a shift in the landscape of her ambitions. Tomorrow would be filled with possibilities and risks. As Sarah reflected on the next steps, her path lay ahead in an uncertain weave full of potential yet fraught with challenges. Her heart raced, and as she hit reply, the question thrummed. Could she navigate this intricate dance of change and opposition without losing herself in the process? The journey was transforming. Would Francesca's interest lead to collaboration? Or would the Emersons' shadows still loom large, demanding her retreat? Sarah awoke early, the cloud of uncertainty still shrouding her as the sun breached the horizon. A mix of excitement and anxiety churned within her, the weight of Francesca's message hanging over her like a storm cloud. Would today finally bring the breakthrough she craved, or would it plunge her deeper into the murky waters of opposition? She donned her most professional attire, choosing garments that radiated confidence while maintaining a grounded humility. As she applied her makeup, the mirror reflected the determined yet vulnerable woman she had become. No longer just a nurse, she was now a leader navigating the treacherous realm of organizational politics. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears as she visualized the meeting ahead, the sharp glances from board members flashing before her like images in a slideshow. Arriving at the coffee shop where she and Francesca had agreed to meet, Sarah felt her stomach lurch. It was an unassuming corner with intimate tables, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee intermingling with the subtle hum of quiet conversation. She chose a spot that allowed a view of the door, an instinctive desire to be prepared for anything. Her thoughts drifted back to her childhood, where unexpected confrontations often meant standing her ground. This meeting was no different. She needed to be prepared for surprises, understanding how to steer the conversation in her favor. Francesca's perspective could provide both opportunity and challenge. It was a risk, but if she planned her moves carefully, she could navigate it with intention. When Francesca entered, her poised demeanor contrasted sharply with Sarah's entanglement of nerves. Dressed in tailored elegance, she exuded a quiet power that both intimidated and intrigued Sarah. They exchanged pleasantries, but the air was thick with unspoken implications. Francesca settled in, her blue eyes assessing Sarah with a mix of curiosity and challenge. I was surprised to receive your email, Francesca began, her tone neutral yet probing. You presented some compelling ideas at the board meeting. I wanted to understand more. Thank you for reaching out, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tremor underneath. I believe that the clinic has incredible potential, and with the right collaborative efforts, we can reshape patient care significantly. But I'm also aware of the resistance against change. I'd like to hear your perspective. Francesca leaned forward, her expression inscrutable. Change is often met with trepidation, especially among those who benefit from the status quo. You likely sensed that resistance in the meeting. I did, Sarah admitted. But I'm willing to engage in discussions that address those concerns. I want to create a pilot program that captures the measurable outcomes while giving everyone a stake in the process. Francesca's lips curled slightly. You're bolder than I expected. Yet, we both know that the Emersons are not easily swayed by conviction alone. What will stop your ideas from being dismissed? The question caught Sarah off guard. Her heart raced as she examined Francesca, searching for a hint of alliance, a flicker of support. She realized then that her journey demanded more than mere assertiveness. She needed strategic insight into navigating influence and power. I can present data backing my proposals, but I know it will take more than numbers, Sarah responded, cradling her coffee cup like an anchor. I want your insight into the Emerson mindset. How do I appeal to their concerns and gains? Francesca sat back, her gaze piercing through Sarah. Tread carefully. If you show vulnerability, it could build trust, but it could also show weakness. Dealing with family ties is complicated. They may pull you in while simultaneously pushing you away. A shiver of understanding coursed through Sarah. She was not just presenting ideas, but navigating emotional landscapes. Her pulse quickened as Francesca's words resonated deeply. She was standing at the threshold of a potential partnership that could either lift her or lead to her downfall. The conversation continued, layers unfolding with each exchange. Sarah began to see Francesca not just as an opponent, but a potential ally. Yet, as they delved deeper into strategies and influences, the shadows of the Emerson family loomed larger, demanding both caution and resolve from Sarah. Would she find a way to strengthen her position without compromising her values? Or would the complexities of loyalty and ambition entangle her in the Emersons' web of expectations? Each moment felt like a decision point, a pivotal turn in her journey. The stakes were rising, and she understood that her efforts could either establish her legacy or shatter her dreams. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and Sarah's heart thrummed with anticipation and dread. As they wrapped up their conversation, a sense of clarity emerged. A new strategy began to formulate in her mind. But would it be enough to truly persuade the Emersons to back her vision? Tomorrow loomed, and with it came the possibility of conflict and revelation, a reckoning that would test her integrity and ambitions in ways she couldn't yet foresee. The meeting with Francesca lingered in Sarah's mind like an unresolved equation, its variables swirling as she drove home. Each thought was tinged with uncertainty, igniting a fire of ambition that battled against the fear of failure. What if the Emersons disregarded her ideas? What if they found her lacking in resolve? These questions gnawed at her, each one more painful than the last. As she parked her car, a plan began to crystallize. Nothing worth having was ever easily attained. She would not let this moment slip away. Looking in the rearview mirror, Sarah reminded herself of the woman she aspired to be, someone who stood tall in the face of criticism and doubt. That night, Sarah wandered into her study, surrounded by crumpled notes and half-finished spreadsheets from her past efforts. Reorganizing them felt necessary, almost therapeutic. She laid out her previous proposals, scrutinizing every line, each statistic, seeking the heartbeat of her own vision. Ideas sparked and fizzled as she tried to bridge the gap between her aspirations and the stark reality of the Emerson family's expectations. Hours blurred as she worked tirelessly, fueled by the fervor of inspiration and determination. In revisiting her notes, she discovered a pattern, a way to align patient care enhancement with the intrinsic motivations of the Emersons' profit margins, community reputation, and legacy. Presenting her ideas not as revolutionary, but as a way to enhance their existing framework would be her key. Strategizing how to frame her proposition, she meticulously arranged models and projected outcomes. She visualized standing before the board, demonstrating how her proposal could amplify their influence while fostering authentic patient engagement. Sleep came reluctantly, shadows of doubt creeping into her mind. Both excitement and anxiety battled in her chest as she drifted off, with Sarah silently vowing to herself she would not be sidetracked by the Emersons' legacy, but rather build upon it, weaving her vision into the fabric of their esteemed family. Dawn broke harshly, as if the universe was amplifying the weight on her shoulders. Sarah straightened her spine, adjusting her blazer and wondering if it radiated the confidence she was desperately trying to summon. The day of the board presentation had finally arrived, and with it came a certain tension that felt both thrilling and stifling. She arrived at the clinic early, her mind racing through her pitch. The gleaming boardroom awaited her. As she stepped inside, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation and scrutiny. The Emersons were already seated, their presence authoritative yet intimidating. Action met hesitation as Sarah prepared to execute her carefully crafted strategy. She knew this was the moment that could define her. Her heart quickened as she introduced her concepts, her voice steady, echoing through the polished wood paneling of the room. Analytical eyes scrutinized her, but she levered their expectations, drawing connections to both growth and tradition. Each point she made was deliberately tied to their legacy, accentuating both past successes and future potential. But as she reached the climactic point of her presentation, Francesca's earlier cautions played through her mind. Vulnerability. Trust. Would they see the earnest intention behind the numbers? As Sarah laid bare the risks, the possibility of limited funding, the challenge of change, she felt the air shift. It was a confession of her conviction, one without defeat. The Emersons exchanged glances, and she saw the skepticism beginning to wane. They began to lean in, caught in the gravity of her passion and knowledge. Just when it seemed she might win them over, a voice broke through the tension. "Sarah," a board member began, "you've put forth some valid points, but what if we told you we have another plan that doesn't involve such drastic changes?" The challenge hung in the air, electrifying and suffocating simultaneously. The board had not discussed this possibility with her, but she could feel the stakes rise higher. In that moment, her proposal versus an unseen agenda that could snatch victory from her grasp. Her breath caught, and with it, the growing realization that this meeting could unravel in ways she had yet to consider. Would she pivot to defend her vision, or would she risk alienating them by confronting their agenda? The path narrowed, and it became clear. The moment of truth had come. The silence in the boardroom felt thick and oppressive, wrapping around Sarah like a heavy blanket. The board members' words threatened to unravel everything she had worked tirelessly to construct. Her instincts urged her to challenge the new plan, to question its merits, yet the reasoning part of her mind screamed for caution. Venturing into the unknown could work against her. She needed more clarity about their intentions. Gathering her composure, Sarah took a deep breath, considering her options. Confrontation might seem bold, but it could also come off as desperate. Instead, she could shift the conversation. "I appreciate your validated concerns," she began, allowing confidence to lace her tone. "However, I believe it's essential to evaluate how aligning with our vision not only uplifts the existing framework, but also steers us towards sustainable growth." Her heart raced as she felt their eyes pivoting back towards her, a collective inquiry rippling through the room. Would they perceive her adaptation as strength or weakness? In exploring revised strategies, we must also consider long-term implications on patient care. If we adhere too closely to traditional paths, we risk stagnation. The weight of her words pressed into the hushed room, sending a tremor of conviction through herself as much as to her audience. A moment of contemplation stretched, then broke as another board member chimed in, challenging her logic with hard statistics. A volley of counterpoints erupted. Each keen jab aimed to point out inconsistencies, doubts, or shortcomings in her proposal. Each intensity felt like daggers against her confidence. Yet the inner voice of resilience began to speak up over the barrage. She had prepared for this. Frantically, but responsibly, she pulled from her arsenal, recalling detailed research and studies supporting her perspective. "Indeed, immediate financial metrics are crucial to our survival," she said, voice crisp and unwavering. "Yet they must coexist with innovative patient engagement strategies that can only enhance our profitability in the long run. The potential for both is viable, if we choose to embrace change." The Emersons seemed to pause, exchanging deliberative glances. A flicker of intrigue began to weave through their previously stoic expressions. But she could feel the clock ticking, an exhausting reminder that time was not on her side, and this moment demanded decisive action. Sarah surveyed the room, isolating each member's body language for clues. One documented their thoughts in fidgeting pens. Another narrowed their eyes in contemplation. Perhaps she had struck a chord. Yet the nervous flicker in her own behind every word amplified her fears. Would this clash reveal her vulnerabilities or showcase her tenacity? Let us consider a pilot program, she proposed, pushing the envelope further. It would allow us to test the feasibility of integrating my approach alongside your existing plan. Unexpectedly, Francesca leaned forward, visibly intrigued. You're suggesting an experimental phase? That could alleviate some of the concerns we have about introducing drastic changes. A collective breath seemed to release among some members, a cautious acceptance fluttering in the air. There was a gap in opening, but it could close just as swiftly if she hesitated. Exactly, Sarah urged, sensing the opportunity with renewed vigor. By initiating a low-risk trial, we can secure insights into patient responses and operational logistics without overhauling our entire framework. The board's murmurs crescended, uncertainty battling with cautious optimism. This was her chance, yet questions lingered. If they approved her pilot, what would she lose? Could the Emersons' plan deceptively weave into the groundwork, overshadowing her vision? Pressure mounted again, as another voice emerged, this time a hybrid of curiosity and skepticism. And what are we prioritizing with this pilot? What metrics would define its success? A wave of anxiety crashed over her, testing every shred of resolve. Reflecting urgently on the metrics, timeframes, and feedback mechanisms she needed, she found clarity. This was about commitment and belief in her vision. We'll define success through patient satisfaction metrics, engagement rates, and ultimately, the adaptability of staffing models, she proclaimed, her voice steadying with each point. As she laid out her reasoning with precision, she began to feel a budding sense of conviction. Each word, each statistic, and each connection she made built a bridge she could cross. It was a moment of empowerment blooming from the ashes of doubt, but she knew that this was only the beginning. Just as she believed the tides were shifting back in her favor, another board member interjected, "But can we afford the resources for this testing phase?" This new challenge threatened to undo everything she'd just built up. Could she navigate this fine line of skepticism that now threatened to drown her budding confidence? The answer lingered just out of reach, and she braced for the fight ahead, where her leadership, vision, and fortitude would each become tested in ways she could hardly anticipate. It was clear. The stakes were escalating, and with them, the critical realization that her journey was now entwined with a battle for visibility and worth. How far was she willing to go to fight for her vision? The boardroom pulsed with a tension that crackled through the air. Sarah could feel the weight of every eye fixed on her, each stare a reminder of her newly precarious position. Can we afford the resources for this testing phase? The words hung ominously, ringing in her ears like a bell tolling for a dire reckoning. She paused, allowing the silence to stretch, realizing how critical this moment could be for her ambition. While the board meticulously balanced risks with potential gains, her heart raced as a flicker of desperation ignited within her. She had come so far, invested so much of herself into this vision. Surrender was not an option. Actually, she asserted, her mind racing, I believe that investing in this pilot could save money in the long run. By pinpointing innovative solutions and prioritizing areas of patient impact now, we can ultimately streamline our operations. The boldness of her claim caught her by surprise, but it was also liberating. The seeds of confidence that had been dormant now sprouted fiercely. Francesca leaned back, furrowing her brow as she processed the implications. But what if we see minimal returns? She countered. Wouldn't that put further strain on our already limited resources? Sarah felt an urge to lash out, to plead that they trusted her vision, but she instead steadied herself, drawing from a deeper well of restraint. If we succeed, we enhance our patient engagement, which can lead to higher retention rates and, consequently, a more robust financial foundation. It could set a precedent for additional investment, not to mention bolster our market position. The room shifted slightly, a subtle movement indicating a change in the air, but Sarah couldn't let herself become complacent. With each passing moment, an internal battle ensued. The specter of self-doubt hovered close, clawing at her resolve. What if she was wrong? What if the groundwork she so eagerly pursued collapsed into failure? As if reading her mind, another board member, Carl, chimed in. All of this sounds theoretically robust, but how do you plan to maintain oversight? Resources have to be allocated properly. A tightness gripped her chest. She fought against the tide of discouragement, recalling every late night spent buried in research and strategies, even her laboring under stress that threatened her sanity. I've outlined a detailed framework that facilitates effective oversight, she offered. Regular benchmarks and feedback loops will allow for swift adjustments as needed. It's a dynamic process that would require collaboration, but can definitely work. This felt like the moment she had to solidify her stance. The atmosphere thickened with scrutiny, and every heartbeat felt sharper. Sarah focused her attention on each board member, gauging their responses. What about the repercussions if we fail? Carl pressed, narrowing his eyes. Suddenly, vulnerability crept in again. The deeper truth was that the fear of failure stung like a venomous bite. If we do not try, we condemn ourselves to stagnation. Our competition is evolving. Our patients deserve to see innovation. Her voice faltered momentarily, revealing the undercurrent of urgency. A lull settled over the room. Sarah could sense the board weighing her words. For every skeptic, there seemed to be a glimmer of intrigue. Yet she remained acutely aware that the transition from doubt to acceptance was a narrow path. Francesca finally broke the silence. I'm inclined to support this pilot, contingent upon a comprehensive risk assessment. We need to ensure stability while testing new waters. What's your next move, Sarah? With a renewed sense of purpose igniting within her, Sarah replied, I'll leverage my team's expertise to gather the necessary data, create a rigorous risk framework, and present it for your review all by the end of the week. It felt like she had crossed an invisible threshold. Yet anticipation quivered in her stomach, battling with the weight of the challenges ahead. The realization that she had to tackle these obstacles alone loomed over her like a storm cloud. As the board nodded in cautious agreement, she mentally braced herself. The real challenge was just beginning. The pilot, if successful, could elevate her standing, but failure might expose every doubt she harbored. Would she find a foothold in this opportunity, or falter under the weight of their expectations? The decision amplified her internal struggle. How could she cultivate external success while navigating her growing unease about personal vulnerabilities? When the meeting adjourned, she felt an unsettling mixture of triumph and anxiety wash over her. Outside, the world felt both familiar and foreign. She was walking a tightrope, and one slip could alter everything. What Sarah didn't know was that unforeseen challenges lurked just beyond the horizon, and the true test of her capabilities was waiting to be unleashed. Would she rise to meet them, or would the burden of expectation bring her to her knees? As the days turned into a whirlwind of activity, Sarah found herself immersed in the heart of the clinic's revitalization project. Each meeting with board members was interspersed with rigorous analyses, spirited debates, and a palpable tension threading through the air. But beneath that tension, Sarah began to cultivate something extraordinary: the unmistakable feeling of purpose. She poured every ounce of her energy into the pilot program, ensuring each detail was meticulously organized. The deeper she delved into her role as both a nurse and a leader, the more she realized the weight of her responsibility. This was not just about the clinic, it was about creating safety, healing, and ultimately community. Her late husband's dream of a health clinic for uplifting the community began to feel tangible, transforming from ink on a page into a living, breathing project. As the relentless tide of progress washed over her, a profound change settled in. Sarah had initially stepped into this challenge as a grieving mother, seeking a legacy for Tommy. But now she stood resolved as a transformative leader. The final piece of her transformation fell into place. Her confidence surged as her contributions became increasingly recognized. At one quarterly review meeting, the board noted a shift, acknowledging that her pilot program was generating not just measurable outcomes, but also strengthening community bonds. They had finally begun to see the potential in her vision. The acknowledgement felt electric. It was validation she desperately sought. She was no longer the grieving widow, She was a respected professional, someone with meaningful influence. Yet her journey was not without its challenges. The Emerson family's skepticism lurked at every corner, particularly from Francesca, who had assumed a more dominant role within the board. During one intense discussion over budgeting, Francesca dismissively pressed, "Ultimately, this is not just about passion, this is a business. Let us be reasonable." In that moment of tension, an echo of doubt crept in, battering against the walls of her newly fortified resolve. She felt trapped between her moral compass and corporate expectations. But just as the shadows threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered the words from her late husband's journal. He had written about the marriage of heart and mind, of pursuing not just profit but purpose. Refusing to let his teachings fade away, she interjected, "Nothing in medicine is without risk, yet every day, we choose to care." This pilot demonstrates that we can still be a sustainable entity while impacting lives. If we sidestep our mission, we fail on all fronts. The unyielding demeanor of the Emersons started to crack. For the first time, a glimpse of respect coursed through the room. They began to nod, eyes softening as they recognized her not only as James's widow, but as someone fiercely devoted to the mission. And then one rainy afternoon, Francesca requested to meet with Sarah one-on-one. Anxiety fluttered in her stomach as she prepared for the meeting, unsure of what to expect. The conversation that unfolded was a revelation. Francesca admitted her fears that the board would slip too radically into the unknown, urging cautious advancement. With vulnerability on the table, they inched closer to an understanding. Sarah saw the flicker of change in Francesca's eyes. Together, they strategized, agreeing to form a committee that would ensure collaboration between the board and the clinic staff. The real breakthrough came as they ventured out into the community together, listening to patients, caregivers, and local leaders. Their drive to unite on this mission transformed the dynamics in the boardroom significantly. With each holistic conversation, they painted a clearer picture, a shining example of what aligned vision could achieve, and the Emerson family began to shed their stubborn ego. Months later, the pilot program launched with undeniable success, drawing accolades not just within their organization, but across the community, validating what Sarah had envisioned all along. She could hardly contain her pride as she watched the initiative flourish, elevating standards while knitting stronger ties to her community. When the annual gala approached, it was a surreal moment. As she stood at the podium, the familiar weight of the room rested over her, but this time it felt different. No longer standing in the shadows of grief, she spoke with poise. "Tonight isn't just a celebration of our achievements. It's a testament to the resilience within each of us," she declared, her voice steady and full of conviction. "Together, we turned challenges into opportunities and fostered healing in more ways than one." The applause filled her with warmth. As she descended from the podium, she made eye contact with Francesca. There was a spark of mutual respect and understanding, an acknowledgement of transformation, her growth, and even the Emersons. They had begun to redefine their place in the world, pivoting toward compassion and leadership. Sarah had reclaimed her identity, achieving what she didn't believe was possible. No longer defined solely by the loss of her son, she emerged as a leader in her field, a catalyst for change who would be recognized far beyond the walls of the clinic. With satisfaction echoing in her chest, she took a moment to reflect on her journey. She had conquered self-doubt, embraced vulnerability, and emerged not only as a professional but as a beacon of hope. The past was a part of her story, but it no longer dictated her course. This was the moment she had fought for, an achievement rooted not just in titles or accolades, but in profound personal growth, the solid foundation of who she had become. Now, as you resonate with Sarah's journey, it's you who needs to take charge. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now, your support fuels the algorithm and helps others find these powerful tales. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this remarkable conclusion. You need to be a part of this movement toward personal achievement and growth. Comment below your reactions and theories about this ending. Your voice matters.